My wife and I moved into our old house in New England in summer 2000. We had looked at dozens of houses, but this one just immediately felt like home. Soon after, we invited a good friend James and his husband up for a weekend. Keep James and his husband in mind. We were pretty well into getting our late party on, playing cards, drinking, smoking in the dining room. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw, though the experience was more like perceived, very vividly, an older woman with jet black hair sitting next to the old upright piano in the corner. The piano came with the house. We specifically requested that the previous owner include it in the cell because it was so cool, and we didn't have much furniture. It wasn't even slightly scary. In fact, it was just like she was hanging out. I mentioned it to everyone and we laughed it off. Drinking and the fun continued through the night. I was never really a ghost believer and still a skeptic 100%. But the rest of the story makes me really wonder. Several weeks later, we met a neighbor from down the street who lived in the neighborhood for 45 years. You live in the Moral King house, she tells us. Mora was a really interesting lady. She was a famous designer in the 1930s. Please Google her, everybody. That lived there alone after her husband committed suicide. Very tragic. But she was an interesting lady. Very independent and ahead of her time. She traveled all over the world. She was Greek, I think. Greek, I ask? Weird question, but did she have black hair? Yes. She had jet black hair, even when she was an old woman. It was very striking. Yep, I got the chills right then. Many weeks later, I met another neighbor from down the street that had lived there for 60 plus years, and he starts telling me about Merle. She was a famous fashion designer. She designed gowns for Rita Hayworth and all the classic film stars. And she designed costumes for Broadway plays too. Her parties were legendary, he tells me. She used to have all of her gay boyfriends from Broadway come up on the train, and they'd drink and sing show tunes at the piano in the dining room all night long. Yep, now this all could be coincidental, but it just seems too much so. But she must have been an awesome woman. People from around town have given us some of her original drawings, and even an unfinished dress she was working on. There haven't been any more Merle sightings, but shortly after my wife got pregnant 20 years ago, we both woke up out of the cold sleep at the same time and looked at each other like, what the fuck? And then our bedroom door slammed hard. We like to think that Merle wasn't a fan of kids. She never had any of her own, so she was like, later y'all, I'm out of here. That's my story. Thanks for reading. I just had surgery on Monday. Now I'm out of work for the next 3 weeks. I believe I have always been sensitive since a young age. Before surgery, people would ask if I'm nervous about surgery, and I'd honestly tell them that I was not nervous. I trust my doctors, and I am at peace if something happens, and I die. I told them the only thing I was nervous about was becoming a super psychic and not getting any sleep for the rest of my life because I have ghosts visiting me while I'm sleeping. People would laugh and say, that's so me, and we all went on with our days. Well, as soon as I came home, I felt like there were so many spirits in my room. I even saw a shadow person in the corner of my room, which isn't an uncommon occurrence, knowing that I was just coming out from anesthesia, and I was pretty drugged up. I didn't necessarily believe what I was seeing. I especially keep seeing this woman, which I can't see her face, but she is wearing a late 40s, early 50s clothes, just walking in and out of my room. I just associated this with me being drugged up. At night, I'd be visited by the shadow person and not getting a lot of sleep. And during the day, it was this woman, and I somehow was able to get some sleep. Well, I didn't believe these could be real until one afternoon. I was by myself for an hour, while my caretaker had to go into work and finish up some things. I was napping on my bed, and my cat was sleeping on my legs. I heard what sounded like someone opening kitchen cabinet doors, hearing noises of things moving in the living room, and I'm thinking my sister has come back from work. I hear a swishing, shuffling, walking sound down the hallway, and saw the woman in the 40s to 50s dress go straight into my sister's room. My cat's head shot up. He just stared into her room for the longest time. I saw his ears perk and move when we heard what sounded like her dresser drawers opening and closing. Then my cat relaxed after we stopped hearing anything, and I did too. I texted my sister, and she had a mild panic attack because she couldn't remember locking the front door after she left. She rushed home to make sure someone wasn't actually in the house. She didn't find anything, and we went through possible noise causes. She was nervous because she knew of my abilities, but I always reassured her that I could take care of the house and make it a safe place, even with visiting spirits. And I always have. But since I'm recovering and not totally mentally here because of the drugs, I know I am not as strong, and I am definitely in a weakened state to fight off negative spirits. Well, the next day my mother is staying with me, so my sister goes to work. I'm not supposed to be lifting anything 2 pounds or more, so they are my hands right now. I remember just resting in the living room while my mom was in our office working from home. I saw the woman walk by me in the kitchen, and she disappeared. I never get a threatening feeling from her, and I honestly feel quite safe when I see her. At this moment, I get a text from my boyfriend while he's at work. For some reason, when he has a ghost experience, I am having something simultaneously happening too. Usually these are much more dark spirits. He told me he was on the forklift and saw above him something in the shape of a human, but didn't give off real human vibes. It was just clinging to the ceiling and then disappeared. Every time that day he saw this thing that was always staring at him threateningly. I always saw or felt the woman nearby me at the same time. I'm wondering now if this woman is my protector while I'm going through my surgery in my weakened state. I feel very blessed now to see her, and I'm not scared. My cat doesn't seem to be nervous either. I haven't seen the shadow person much since I've seen an increase of her. My sister jokes now when I tell her when I see the woman. If I see her go into the kitchen, my sister says, "Oh, she's telling me I need to do the dishes. It's filthy in there." Or yesterday, when I saw my bedroom curtain move like someone walked by it, and I heard a weird sound, my sister made the exact sound I heard. She said, "Well, I guess even the ghosts can stub their toes when they come to check in on you." I don't know why I'm telling this story, but I guess I'm curious if other people who have had surgery have had an increase of paranormal activity. In June of 2006, I lost my mother to an accidental overdose of morphine. I was only 8 years old at the time, and I'm the one who found her unresponsive, trying to wake her. Anyway, fast forward a couple of days after her death, I'm sleeping in my room at my grandparents' house, on my mom's side, and I had one of the worst dreams of my life at that age. In the dream, my mom was hiding under my bed, trying to drag me under with her to take me wherever she was. It scared the shit out of me, so I ran to my grandparents' room crying and told them. The next day we went to collect her belongings. It was a very confusing time for me, and I don't think it really hit me that she was gone yet. even though I saw her body lying there, lifeless 2 days prior. That night, I slept with my grandparents because I was scared shitless to step foot in my room. And as I drifted off to sleep, my mom came to me in my dream. I remember crying in the dream, and she wrapped me up in her arms. I then woke up to feeling slight pressure on my legs, and then it felt like I was being squeezed for a few seconds. I lost my shit, dude. I sat up and nudged my grandma, saying someone is in here with us, and they were lying on top of me. And I told her my dream. I was sobbing at this point, and so was my grandma. So I don't know if this is a ghost story or just something my 8-year-old mind came up with to try and cope. But to this day, I believe that my mom gave me a hug for one last time. First, a little backstory. On April of 2019, my grandma died of cancer on her bed in the apartment where my dad lived at the time, and it hit me hard. It wasn't best time for me mentally, so like November, December of the same year, I was spending the night at my dad's apartment, and around 3 a.m., I went to the kitchen to get something to drink, and while I was pouring myself a glass of milk, I heard something whispering my name, and it sounded like my grandma's voice. I, scared and nervously, looked around, thought to myself for a second, but then I brushed it off, thinking my mind is playing with me. Then I heard it again and again, and I still brushed it off. A few weeks later, my dad and I were talking about my grandma, and he said that he shared the same experience I had, where he kept hearing my grandma's voice. I was shocked, and he kept quiet and brushed it off like I did. So, do you think it was a ghost, or was me and my dad being crazy? Once a day, my friend calls me and tells me that her mom has done some horrible things, like loud screaming, crying, and laughing, and doing many more things like that. I went to his house to check it all out and to check out all the things that happened there. I went to my friend's mom's room. I feel some negative energy there. I can't take a breath of fresh air and feel anxious. Then I call another friend who believes in ghosts. I also believe, but he is like a ghostbuster type of person. He came and he also felt some negative energy. He tells me that the spirit is in the body of your friend's mom. My friend, who is a ghostbuster type, gave some suggestions for removing the spirits from the body, and he also tells me how spirits came inside the body. My friend's mom went to her neighbor's house after talking with her, and she came back to the house in the middle. When she comes to the house, her foot was placed on some horrible thing. From that horrible weird thing, the spirit came inside my friend's mom, and she's doing weird things. Can anyone tell me what happened and why she's doing weird things like loud screaming and crying and laughing? Before I begin, I will need to tell you the context. Before my parents moved into our house, our great-grandparents used to live there. After they died, my parents moved in there, or at least that's what I think, as I don't know the full story of my family living there before I was born. I think that's all you need to know beforehand. Back in 2020, I used to sleep in my bed with the door to the hallway wide open. The kitchen is on the opposite side of the hallway. One day, one of my cats just sat in the hallway staring into the kitchen, as if there was something there. I thought it was weird, and I didn't think much of it. Later, I woke up to the same cat sleeping beside me in the bed. I stared into the hallway and saw a silhouette of a woman in a dress stretching her arms out. I was terrified and locked the door. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. Since then, I have only experienced one paranormal thing. A feminine voice humming from the attic about every 3 months. Since then, I have made the assumption that the silhouette lady was my great-grandma. Still to this day, I cannot explain this strange event. Okay, let's start with the backstory. One of my sister's best friends, who I had known since I was around 11, passed away in a car accident. We only had a 2-year difference in age, so I always hung out with them. I always really looked up to her and admired her for her quick wit and amazing sense of humor. She was a wild partier, also which I definitely grew into myself. As we got older, we would party all together as well, and me and her both smoked a lot of weed. I still do. I am a lifer. I am dedicated. Anyways, I was 20 when she passed, and honestly losing her affected me really deeply. I have always been someone who has had odd experiences, and I feel like I'm extremely connected spiritually, so I had a feeling she would visit me, or show me she was near in some way, and boy did she ever. Within days of her passing, she was fucking with me. Multiple times she would flicker my lights until I actually yelled for her to quit it, and instantly, no flickering. I'd be listening to music, and this girl always switched it to her fave songs. But the thing that really got me, she would retrieve my joint butts after I would toss them and bring them back to me. Two instances of this are my favorites. One time I had a friend of mine staying over. We smoked out one on the front porch. I walked across the street and tossed it. Me and my friend go upstairs to find my bed sheets drawn back perfectly folded with the butt and a lighter sitting there. My friend nearly shit her pants. The second time, I was at her cousin's house. Her cousin was in the hot tub with 3 other friends, and I stayed out and smoked. I went around the house and tossed the butt over the fence. I literally told the girls as I did it that our girl was going to do this to me, and to wait for it, 'cause she would definitely show it off to them too. I sat for like 5 minutes and got the urge to look down at the table. There it was. All the girls were stunned while I just said my typical, "Girl, I love when you join me for ganja." I pass by her crash spot twice a day, to and from work, and blow her a kiss to heaven every time. I love and miss you, babe. Thanks for looking out for me.